How we doing tonight? Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk up and running as always. Glad to have you here with us today. Sean Stiers, he's Jesse Stiers. It is Thursday. We're getting closer to the end of this week. Has this week been a long week or a short week for you, Jess?
Kind of a mix of in between. The days go by so fast because I seem to always just have work to do. And so it's like a mix of a lot of work, which makes the day kind of seem long, but then you're working so much that the day kind of goes fast. It's a weird dynamic that's going on right now.
Yeah. Glad to have you with us. Glad to have all our listeners, viewers with us here tonight in the live YouTube channel and, of course, on the podcast as well. It is Thursday, close to the end of the week, 2 days away from Marcus Freeman getting his fourth crack at getting his first victory at Notre Dame. We will see how it goes when the Fighting Irish host Cal this weekend. Don't forget, we've got that game day countdown show, IB Countdown to Kickoff, Saturday mornings. Vince and I have it with you at 10 o'clock here on this channel. So you're going to a wedding this weekend, right?
Yeah, I'll be down in Columbus, Ohio yet again for another event. Yeah, we're going down to a wedding. I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch the game. I honestly don't know what time the game is. I'm probably going to record it. Or sorry, I don't know what time the wedding is. I know what time the game is.
Okay.
Probably going to record it no matter what. So no one texts me. No one let me know what's going on.
Yeah. Stay off Twitter. Stay off the social media so you don't find out. Well, right now, smash that like button, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate you. How can Notre Dame regain its dominance in the trenches? We're going to be talking about that on today's show, and that is, it's a big priority for this team. Both sides of the ball, offensive line, defensive line. Got to get it going, and we will be breaking that down. Jesse's going to break some of that down for us here in a little bit. Marcus Freeman did his end-of-the-week Zoom call with us earlier today. No big news coming out of it. He's excited about Manti Te'o coming back to Notre Dame this Saturday. Not sure yet. They don't have any specific plans for Manti to talk to the team, but he hopes that Manti will talk to the team. I would think he's going to talk to the team if he's going to be around, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would bring him around and not have him kind of speak to the team. So I'm hoping that's the case. I think that he's obviously a great leader and someone who played with, a lot of passion while at Notre Dame. And I think there's a lot of things that he could pass on to a struggling team right now.
Vigo must be drinking it right now. Married life is like being in the trenches, bro. That's right. It is. Marcus also talked a little bit about the challenges of facing Cal's defense, which has allowed a total of 27 points through 2 games. Again, we're going to touch on that in a moment when we talk about, again, getting down in the trenches, getting down and dirty, getting things going on both sides of the ball. They run a very unique defense, and we will talk about that, of course, like I said, coming up here in just a little bit. Marcus Freeman also asked about how after, the players showed all the overwhelming support for him when he was hired, he was asked if he thinks maybe they're playing with the weight of the world on them to an extent to succeed. And here's the quote that Marcus Freeman had. Quote, "I told them if you continue to listen to all the voices out there that have opinions about what you're doing or what we're doing as a football program, you will feel the weight of the world. Focus on the things that matter to dictating the outcome on Saturday." End quote. What do you think about that, Jess?
It's funny that was brought up because I do think that there's, whether, guys want to admit it or not, we kind of touched on this yesterday, there's this kind of weight on everyone's shoulders, and getting this first win out of the way is, it's on everyone's mind. And I think the players, are thinking about it kind of subconsciously, and it's affecting their play to some degree. But I agree with what he's saying. If you're too focused on, what everyone else is concerned about and not, what the team is trying to accomplish, it's just going to slow you down, even more so when you're trying to play, and it makes it even harder for these guys. So they just have to play carefree and not really worry about anything else, worry about what they've been doing this week, and worrying about, establishing Notre Dame football. And, what Notre Dame football is is predicated, by what the game plan is throughout the week. So I definitely think that there is some sort of weight on their shoulders to get this first win out of the way. And I'm curious to see if they're going to play more loose this week
I just
after
think
what happened against Marshall last week.
Freeman needs a catchier phrase for it. Nick Saban calls it rat poison. Marcus Freeman's got to he's got to come up with something to call this, so that he can tell his team. He's too eloquent with his talking sometimes. He just got to come up with some nice catchy catchphrase, not down there in the SEC like all these guys throwing stuff up against the wall. He's not Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach with all the catchy little things. And so he needs to come up with something catchy, not like t-shirt slogan stuff, but just come up with something. Avoid the noise has obviously been used. That's basically what he's saying, though. Avoid the noise, stay away from it, and focus on what you're supposed to focus on. Like Drew Pine was saying the other day, that after Tyler Buckner's injury and he became the quarterback, he basically buried his phone for a couple of days so that he could stay away from it. And I don't blame him, because now you are QB1 at Notre Dame, and you've got to avoid that stuff, I think, at all costs, because I would think that just you get too deep in that, it can just get way too far in your head. Stay away from it. That's probably the best advice anyone can give you. And that's basically the advice that Marcus Freeman gave his team. Freeman also talked about how he's gone about recalibrating in the past. And this may be the most interesting, recalibrating to correct problems once the season has started. Because, like, for example, he was asked about, well, you win games that you didn't think were going to be problems based on what you see in training camp. How do you, go about fixing those things and all, problems once the season has started. He mentioned how last year, the defense in the first two games last year, I think it's easy to forget this, and it does get swept up. They gave up close to 70 points. He comes in here as a new defensive coordinator, and you're going, what is going on with all these long plays that they're giving up? And, Florida State, you're not supposed to be giving up that kind of points to Florida State and Toledo, but they gave up close to 70 points in their first two games. And even though the team was 2-0, he said it wasn't good enough. He said, well, you can't just say we're 2-0, so who cares how many points we've given up? They drilled down, took a closer look at why they had given up 70 points. And here's another quote from Freeman, not just on the 70 points, but now as he looks and applies that, because they were able to clean some things up. And as the season went on, they got better defensively last year. And he talked about, back in his time at Cincinnati doing some of this as well, how you clean some of those things up once the season starts. And he said, quote, let's see what we're doing well. Let's enhance it. The things we're not doing well, let's either change it, let's throw it out, or come up with a new way to do it. Not focus on outcome, but really take a critical look at everything we're doing. Look at the mistakes and figure out why. I told the staff we cannot continue to say, well, if Johnny would have done this, we would have been successful. We've got to say, why didn't he do it? Why did or didn't he do it? And what we have to do to make sure he does do it, end quote. Again, from Marcus Freeman there. And I thought that was, maybe it's not, really revolutionary or revelatory, but at the same time, it's very interesting kind of hearing that, because like, it's easy to say, well, if Braden Lindsey catches that deep post, maybe the outcome is different. Well, why wasn't he in the spot, not necessarily all on Lindsey, but, why did the operation break down? Like, why did Buckner throw the interception on that stick route? A lot of little things that because we've seen so many small breakdowns. And I think really, looking at the middle part of this quote, Jess, take a critical look at everything we're doing. Well, hold it. Let me back this up a little bit. The things we're not doing well, let's either change it, let's throw it out, or come up with a new way to do it. And there was another quote, that he had earlier where he was talking about some of this as well. It really sounded like, okay, we've tried some things in these first two games, and, maybe now it's time to kind of pare things down, start paring things down, taking some stuff out of the playbook, whether it's offensively or defensively, and maybe kind of, pare it down, simplify things a little bit so we're not asking these guys to do too much and they can just go out and play. Like, figure out a smaller group of things that are working and stick with those more often.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of very crucial with now that, Pine stepping in, is you got to have plays, or you got to have a simplified kind of package of plays that you feel comfortable running, especially when you have a second string quarterback, things aren't going well. So I like this kind of proactive Marcus Freeman, and being able to, self-evaluate himself and the team and everything that's gone on so far, because I do agree, if there's things that aren't working and you're 0-2, then it's time to kind of get rid of things. You don't want to be changing and tinkering with things so much that itself can provide, some confusion, especially for guys who are trying to still learn things offensively wise. But I do think that there is an advantage to really sitting down and breaking down, okay, these are the plays that work, these are the plays that don't work. And then finding, with those plays that work, you can build off of those and kind of use them as your base to be more creative, because there's certain personnel packages, I think, that Notre Dame, I guess, would be, that they can optimize their offense compared to others. So they need to find those base kind of plays that work and build off of those, and kind of have, more of the trickery plays kind of come off of that. But yeah, I definitely agree with what Freeman is saying, that they have to figure out why things aren't working in order to, get things better moving forward.
Right. Not just say, well, if he hadn't jumped off sides on that, again, like, not just essentially look at the symptom, figure out the cure for the whole thing. And Archer 452 says, I think a ton of this changes if both lines start playing up the potential. Right. If they can do that, they'll win a lot of games on talent alone. And that takes us to our main topic for tonight's show. How can Notre Dame regain its dominance in the trenches? Offensive line, it's been a few years, I think, since you can say that they have truly been dominant. Defensive line, it's been a really good defensive line for the last few years. Now, you do have a new factor in there. You've got a new position coach, even though you've got a lot of the same players up there on the line, both Adam Alola's and Isaiah Foskey, to be specific. So which side of the ball do you want to start on, Jess? We're going to look at both sides. Jesse's going to give us his breakdown. Tell us how he thinks Notre Dame can regain its dominance down in the trenches. Where do you want to start?
I think that we should start defensively. I think,
okay,
defensively, there's a lot more that you can do with, design and stunt and like that kind of thing, based off of what Cal is trying to accomplish offensively.
Okay, go ahead.
So the first thing, in looking at Cal's game against UNLV, the first thing that you notice is they run a lot of empty sets, a lot of 11 personnel, one running back in the backfield, 3 wide receivers, and then they're using their tight end as kind of like a H-back, a flex back, whatever you want to call it. He's not on the line of scrimmage. He's not, hand isn't in the dirt. He's kind of like a wing. I don't know what you necessarily want to call it. And they have a lot of tendencies, actually, too. When they're in shotgun or this 11 personnel, they're going to pass probably about 90% of the time. And anytime that Plummer goes under center, they're gonna run 90% of the time. They have very easy tells of when they're going to pass the ball and when they're going to run the ball. So if you're Notre Dame, that's the first thing that you have to look at on it as a defensive line.
Okay, so slow up for a second then. So they have very easy tells for when they're going to run and when they're going to pass. So that our Irish Breakdown listeners and viewers can be ready when we're sitting there watching Saturday. So give us those tells. Like, what are we looking for run pass for Cal in the offense?
It's honestly, look at their formation when they come out, when they break the huddle and they're at the line of scrimmage. When Plummer is in shotgun and there is 11 personnel, 1 running back and 1 tight end, that tight end can be flexed out. So, you have 2x2s, 2 wide receivers on the, top and bottom of the formation, or he can be up, like I was saying, as a H-back, a flex back, whatever you want to call it. He's basically right behind the tackle off, a couple steps off the line of scrimmage. So
okay,
they pass, like, I wish I could have kept track, but when I was watching the first half of the UNLV game, I'm almost positive they only ran the ball out of shotgun 1 time, but they still like to show run action. They'll still pull a guy that H-back will still pull, and they'll do a lot of what Marshall did.
Try to move some defenders around by doing that.
Yeah, they want to move defenders around, and they want those linebackers to have to respect, a pulling lineman. So then those guys get sucked up, and they can still pass down the field. So that's the number one thing to look at, when they're going to pass the ball. Running the ball, they always go single back, under center, and it's largely a 13 personnel. They bring in another tight end, and they're anytime they're under center, it's almost like 90% of the time that they're going to run the ball. I only saw them pass out of under center, I think once or one or two times. So as a defensive line, that should be your first kind of tell, what formation are they coming out of? And it's really simple, because if the quarterback's under center, they're likely going to run the ball. If the quarterback is not under center, they're likely going to pass the ball. And it's crazy because it's such an easy tell, like that just formation alone.
I mean, that's like basic high school tell type stuff.
Right. Which, really. I don't know if that was game plan of, UNLV, and if that might change for Notre Dame, but I mean, it was simple as if they're coming out in shotgun, they're going to pass the ball. If they're coming out under center, they're going to run the ball. And a lot of times while in shotgun, it was just straight back passes. And like I was saying, they're still going to show some kind of like pulling guard, pulling lineman scheme, just to bluff it, to get those linebackers to bite. And so I think a key advantage, and to establish control in the trenches is, first of all, when they're under shotgun, is they can't let Plummer sit back there all day, or he'll find, he's a good quarterback. Like he can find guys,
but he's maybe a little bit more mobile than Jack Cohn, would you say? I was going to say he's not a real mobile quarterback.
He's not a real mobile quarterback. He's a true pocket pass quarterback, three-step drop. But when you let him sit, he's going to find the open guy. So the first thing, for Notre Dame is when they recognize pass, they need to the defensive line needs to get pressure on him instantly, because if he sits back there in an open pocket, they have good enough wide receivers, and Plummer's got a good enough arm, and he's a good enough quarterback that he's going to find the open guy majority of the time. So what I think that needs to happen is they need to find ways to get innovative with their 4-man stunts, and then they need to find ways, to incorporate a fifth rusher, essentially, whether that be a linebacker, whether that, maybe that's a safety coming down. They need to find ways to ultimately get pressure on Plummer, because they're ultimately a pass heavy team. Yeah. I was talking about formations in which they pass and run in, but they like to pass the ball, and they like to go out of shotgun. So you got to get him uncomfortable. You got to get stunts in with your 4-man. And that's really what the defensive line is going to have to do to, assert their dominance in the pass game, is get creative with how they're going to get to Plummer in the backfield. It can't be, we're going to play patty cake. These defensive linemen need to put, pin their ears back and get physical with these offensive linemen and really have stunts off of each other.
We saw times last week when they had Foskey on one side and Adamalola on the other side. So that, they were trying some different things to get pressure last week, even against Marshall. It worked a couple of times, but not consistently enough. How do you think that Cal goes about trying to block Isaiah Foskey? Because obviously he is a guy we're still waiting to show up. And we had a question in the chat here, why is Foskey MIA? So, if he can get going, obviously that's a huge boost for Notre Dame. How do you think that Cal goes about defending him?
I was talking about how when they go that, shotgun 11 personnel, one running back, one tight end, that tight end is basically a flex guy. His toes are at the tackle's heels. He's off the line of scrimmage. And I think you're going to see a lot of using that extra guy to block Foskey, whether even on passing plays, I think that they're going to try to chip him. There's going to be off the line of scrimmage. There's going to be two guys getting their hands on Foskey, and whether that tight end stays in to block him or releases for some sort of delayed pass route, I think that the majority of the time that up back or H back or, flex back, whatever you want to call it, the tight end, he's going to provide some sort of assistance on Foskey. And I think that, Foskey being MIA is a lot of game plan. These teams know that Foskey is a dynamic player. They know, his potential and that he's a stud. And so why run plays at him when you don't have to? I think that a lot of this is, Notre Dame needs to get creative, knowing that teams are going to game plan around Foskey because he is their best player in the box. When we're talking defensive linemen and linebackers, he is the best player out of that group, and offensive coordinators know that. So I think Al Golden needs to do a better job of maybe switching up, Isaiah Foskey. Don't put him on the strong side of the field. It doesn't need to be something that's predetermined. I think that they need a mix of where they place Foskey and how they get him interacting, with these different stunts. These stunts should be designed around Foskey, just like these offensive coordinators are designing to avoid Isaiah Foskey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this is a Cal team that has given up 6 sacks through 2 games, 2 against UC Davis in the opener, and 4 last week in that win over UNLV. So as much as they want to drop back and throw with a pretty immobile quarterback, and the fact that 4 sacks last week against the running Rebels, this would seem like if Notre Dame's pass rush is ever going to really get going, this would seem like one of those moments, the kind of opportunity that is really presenting itself for Foskey and these guys to get after it.
Well, yeah, especially like I was saying, if they're showing their tendencies of being in shotgun and they want to pass the ball out of that majority of the time, that just makes the defensive line's job a lot easier because there's no run responsibility. Your only responsibility is to get to the quarterback. So I think that this game largely stems on what Notre Dame can accomplish in the defensive line. Can they get sacks? Can they get pressures? Can they get QB hits? Can they, we know that the secondary can disguise its coverages, but you can't ask the secondary to guard, for extended amounts of time. They need to hit Plummer, and they need to hit Plummer often. He needs to be uncomfortable. He needs to feel like that pocket is ever changing and he doesn't know, is it going to collapse? Is it going to hold true? That kind of situation. So I think that the defensive line knows, that they've been underperforming. And I think that they know that this week, especially with an offense that's been struggling and a backup quarterback, they need to take the game into their own hands as much as possible, shut down Cal, and create turnovers with their pressure.
Yep. First, thank you, David Weigel, for the super chat in there. And Salty, no one on the other team should ever be able to expect where Foskey will be. Make it so nobody ever expects him. Yeah, I mean, like the Spanish Inquisition. That's right. No one expects a Spanish Inquisition. That's right. You've got to move him around on any given play. Maybe even line him up inside sometimes. I completely agree with them guessing at all times, so they are guessing at where their protection needs to be for an athlete and a pass rusher like Isaiah Foskey.
And it's almost you could drop him, not a true linebacker, but you can bluff him back there and still bring him on some sort of delayed blitz, delayed stunt, maybe he loops in and becomes the defensive tackle while the defensive tackle loops to the outside and becomes the defensive end. There's so many different things that you can do with him bluff wise. And I think that needs to be the focal point for a team that's not getting a lot of pressure right now.
I agree. Anything else in terms of Notre Dame's defensive line you want to talk about before we switch over to the other side of the ball?
We talked a lot about, how they can attack Cal when they're going, straight pass plays. But when they go under center like that, they like to bring in 13 personnel. They like to use 2 pulling, guards and tackles at the same time, which means that these linebackers in run situations have to be ready to help, and when you have pulling guards and tackles, the linebackers almost become an extension of the defensive line. They have to get into the hole fast. They need to fill. They need to play physical. They need to shed blockers. And so when they bring in 13 personnel, I almost believe a linebacker needs to kind of walk down and set the edge. And especially when they have 13 personnel and you have multiple tight ends on the field, it's almost big on big at that point. So I think there's another thing that helps that would help, Notre Dame in this game is when teams are going out of 11 personnel, it gets so hard because they can intertwine, if they're going up pace, no huddle, that tight end can flex out and he can also be on the line of scrimmage.
Right.
So as a defense, that forces Notre Dame, okay, what are we going to do down lineman wise? Because if that tight end is flexed out, you only want to really go with 3 down linemen at that point. And then if he's brought in, you want to go 4 down linemen. And so Notre Dame needs to be able to, play in what's called an Okie scheme where that 4th man on the line of scrimmage becomes kind of a hybrid guy,
Yeah,
being able
flex.
to,
Yeah.
being able to defend the pass, split out with that tight end, but also be able to play run at the same time. So I think that that's going to be the biggest, the two biggest kind of positions this week. Notre Dame defensively is what can they do with Foskey, and then when Cal's in 11 personnel, who's going to be that flex guy that can be able to defend the pass and run at the same time.
So do you like this matchup for Notre Dame? Like, should this be a matchup, Notre Dame's front against Cal's front, that we should see Notre Dame dominate Saturday?
It's hard to say because I felt like they should have done more against Marshall
Last week. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and so it's hard to say, I like the matchup, but it's just a matter of whether or not they're going to execute and want to be physical. It just felt at times last week that they didn't want to be physical. When I played, there was a saying that one of our coaches always had, and he said, "Do you want to be the nail or the nailee?" Right now, Notre Dame's continuing to be the nailee. They need to be, the hammer. They need to be laying that, hammering the nail, and that's really what I want to see is them establishing the first punch, them establishing, off the line of scrimmage, they're knocking back the Cal offensive lineman, rather than the Cal offensive lineman kind of stonewalling them.
And this goes to the linebackers too, because I don't know that we were necessarily. I don't think it was you and I think it was Vince and I a couple nights ago when somebody brought up Notre Dame's linebackers catching too many blocks and really not block destructing well enough. As a guy who played that position inside, Jess, what do you think about what you've seen from the linebacker group so far along those lines? Specifically when it comes to like being physical against the run, like you were talking about.
It hasn't been very great, to be honest with you, and it almost looks like it's it's like a mindset thing. These linebackers have to know that they need to be physical at times. They need to engage in blocks and be able to shed blocks. And you want to be able to throw a punch and see those offensive linemen's heads, snap back, whip back, and to be able to destruct the block, get off, and find the runner as soon as possible. So Notre Dame needs to do that better. They need to fill downhill faster. They need to get off blocks faster, and they need to rally around the ball a little bit faster. And right now, the linebackers just aren't doing those things. They're getting kind of out physicaled, and even at the point of contact, they're not getting off blocks necessarily as good as they should be.
Okay. Tom says he is scared of Cal's defensive line, and it's a very unique defensive front that they give. And really, it starts with the nose guard, because sometimes they only have a couple of down linemen. But Ricky Correa, his number is 91. So I know if you watched some of the game, Jess, excuse me, you probably saw number 91 Correa, 6'4", 335 pounds. How scared should Notre Dame fans be of that Cal defensive line Saturday?
If I would say, I'm not going to give a level in which they should be scared, but I will say that if of Cal's defense, what should you be most scared of? It's definitely their defensive line. Their defensive line is the strong point of their defense, and it's really unique because their defense. watching Cal's defense is very unique because it's vanilla, but at the same time, the only things that they're really kind of manipulating or changing is what they're doing with their defensive line. Sometimes they go two, true down linemen. Sometimes they go with 3 down linemen. But like I was trying to explain to you a little bit before the show, what's so weird is that they're outside guys, outside of the guys who have their hand in the dirt on the defensive line, their interior linemen, those outside guys, I don't know if you could call them defensive ends because they're standing up. They're not even, they're not even in a 3-point angled, like they're going to pass rush. They're largely in a 2-point stance. And it seems like their job is really to read, pass, and run, run and pass. And if it's run, okay, we're going to come down and engage. If it's pass, we're immediately going to bail out and be in coverage. So it's really hard to gauge Cal's kind of defense because of what they're the defensive line is so ever changing, and there's no guys who are like definitely committed to being down linemen outside of their 2 interior linemen.
What's scary is Notre Dame historically has struggled against 3-4 type defenses or whatever you want to call it, 3 down lineman type defenses, whether it was Ball State a few years ago, Vanderbilt, those are all teams that played 3-4s because, now you've got just what you're describing right there. And with Cal, you're talking about if they're only going to put 2 linemen down, that is another extra body, another linebacker type who's going to be standing up. And what it does is it's harder for the offensive line to figure out, okay, where is the pressure coming from when you've got all these guys standing up and they're better athletes. So you start with that, and then you throw in the fact that, to me, even though there's been some physicality issues from Notre Dame's offensive line, it has been the communication type stuff and knowing who is supposed to block who and those kind of things that have been the biggest problem. So now if you've got these bodies standing up, that confounds the problem. So I think that's what makes it really scary. And then you throw in the fact that you've got a new quarterback who's going to be part of the mix as well.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be tough, and something that's going to be tough is Pine's going to have to be out there identifying fronts, identifying blitzes, who's the Mike linebacker, that kind of thing. And you brought up a really good point: is when they stand up those ends like that, they can stunt so many different ways because of it, and they can bring delayed linebackers off of it. And I think, to your point, that's what's going to be really challenging. And I know that that's what they're going to do to try to torment Notre Dame's offensive line. Is they're going to try to, bring different stunts. They're going to loop those guys. And sometimes you see those guys on the edge loop all the way around to kind of, over the center. So there's going to be a lot of delay. But, kind of going back to what we've been talking about, communication is going to be very, very important for the Notre Dame offensive line. They need to hold true on their gaps. I think what's really hurt Notre Dame offensively is, if they don't see offensive linemen, if they don't see someone directly over them, it's like they kind of vacate that zone and start immediately drastically looking, okay, left and right. And then all of a sudden the guy is right up in their zone where, he's supposed to be. Yeah. And I think Cal is going to try to exploit that to a large degree by bringing those delayed stunts and bringing those kind of linebacker twists, because they've obviously seen the film so far in Notre Dame's offensive line.
Well, and it's not just the offensive line, because, again, now you've got bodies standing up and, so, they can crowd the line of scrimmage or wherever they want to be. And then on one play, one guy might drop into coverage. On the next play, the other guy is dropping into coverage. So you also don't know that as well. And that is obviously something specific to Drew Pine with the interception that we saw last week. And again, going back to the blue gold game with the Jordan Botello interception, those are things that at least in the, those two specific instances, the two most recent specific instances we've seen Drew Pine, those are things that he has had an issue with. So, I mean, that's a big concern as well.
Yeah. And those, what we used to like to call it is the Viking. And that's when the defensive end will, show pressure and then all of a sudden fall out into the flat. Quarterback doesn't see him, and he kind of just undercuts what would be a hitch route or, curl route or, something like that. So that's definitely has to be on Pine's radar, is, knowing who's coming and who's not. And I know it sounds a lot easier, but when you're quarterback and there's a million things going on at the line of scrimmage and you're setting formation, you're setting strength and all those kind of things, you kind of lose track of that. And that's the whole reason why the defense does those sort of things, is to provide as much confusion as possible.
David says, do you recall Kelly saying he didn't need a marquee QB? He could manufacture offense, from the super chat. I believe I remember something along those lines. It has been a while, and, BK's not here anymore. So can this crew manufacture the offense? That's the biggest question right now. So with all this stuff that we're talking about, Jess, how's Notre Dame's offense going to score any points? Because, you're, like I was joking a couple of weeks ago about Ohio State and Jim Knowles, this ain't Buddy Ryan. And how we're kind of building this Cal team up like they're the greatest defense ever. So how's Drew Pine and Tommy Rees in this offense going to score any points Saturday?
I know that the number one way for them to score is they have to avoid running into that interior line of Cows. They need to have design kind of outside zone schemes, outside. They basically they need to attack outside of the tackles. And a lot of that I think they can accomplish with 2 tight end sets. I think that they can, that those guys,
So you're down with the 2 tight end sets. You still want to stick with 12, huh?
I'm not saying that use it the whole game, but I think that there's certain things that they need to set up and build off of, and 12 personnel can accomplish that, because when you have those kind of hybrid flex guys who are on the end, those guys have to be good in coverage. So that means that they're probably not as strong in the run. And Notre Dame has a great strength with their tight ends and being able to set the edge and blocking. And so I think that you could see a lot of like outside veer schemes of running, off the tackle and kind of tight end. And then that sets up some play action RPO where you're making those flex hybrid guys commit on the edge. Are they committing to run, or are they committing to pass? If they're committing to run, then you throw the little, ball out to the flat to Chris Tyree, whoever that might be, and let him use his speed and athleticism to kind of tear up the secondary. But I think in order for them to have success, they need to play outside of the tackles. There's no need to run any power or any, run schemes between the guards as much, because Cal's got really good interior alignment there to quickly shut that down. And so it needs to become, okay, how are we utilizing the boundaries or the edge? We're and getting there, setting the edge, and allowing Notre Dame's speed to kind of take over and athleticism, because they have the athletes, to get out on the edge. And then, okay, after that, let's start building some of more of the intermediate routes over the middle once those linebackers are kind of, sucked up. And I think that's going to be their way to attack this defense, is really avoiding kind of any inside game and really focusing on outside runs, some sort of zone scheme, and then playing off of that and getting some favorable matchups. And it really, to me, it comes down to exploiting those whatever you want to call them, flex defensive ends, and really trying to manipulate them as much as possible. I think if they can manipulate them, whether it be run and pass, that's really going to be the way to get at this Cal defense.
I like what Drew Pine's belly button is saying. Screen game going to be huge that weekend. And we still haven't seen
exactly
a ton of screens, and especially running back screens. And, this is the perfect time to break some of that out if you're going to use it. I think it's the perfect time to just what you're talking about there, where you can attack on the perimeter and take the aggression of that Cal defense and use that against them. You get a guy like Chris Tyree out there and you hit a couple of those, then you're going to really make them think about what they're doing defensively. So
I really like the Tom Frawley's 21 personnel. That could be really beneficial too, because you got both running backs coming out, and you're really forcing things, to the edge. And I think that is something that's could be very beneficial. And I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more 21 personnel out of Notre Dame, because they have a trio of good backs who can all do different things well. So I think that integrating some 21 personnel and getting those guys out on the edge and flushing out, those kind of hybrid guys is really going to be something that could be beneficial to them. And you could do the double, you could fake off of that and then throw out a screen to the other running back. And I think that that's something that can hold those guys true, but then burn them at the same time.
Yeah. And that's why, like I was, kind of giving you a little jab there about the 12 personnel, but based on what you're talking, I see what you're saying where they can still use some of that to their advantage. But at the same time, the other stuff that you were talking about, stay away from the inside stuff, stay more outside. And that's really what this team right now, until that line drastically changes, that's what they're built for. And that's why it's so frustrating still seeing so much 12 and 13 with all these tight ends, because they just have not been physical enough at the point of attack down in the trenches to make it worth that, especially when you have the kind of athletes that you have and you're underutilizing a guy like Chris Tyree, who I think everyone wants to see get the ball in his hands more. And if he doesn't have 15 touches this weekend, I mean, come on, what are we even doing if Chris Tyree's not going to touch it 15 times?
Yeah, and I think a good play that, again, to attack these edges is, why not just a quick pitch out to Tyree, just on it doesn't even have, it could be at a shotgun, it can be under center, it just quick pitch outs and really getting out to, onto the outside can really help them.
Jesse, can they run? Tom wants to know,
Yes.
can they run wheel routes and bubble screens from 21?
Yeah, I mean that's essentially kind of what I'm talking about. Is those two running backs can bubble screen out to each side. You force someone to man up with them, okay? And if they do that and they successfully cover that, well, that means something else probably has to be open down the field. So make them cover that. Fake a bubble screen every play if you need to. But I ultimately think why aren't they running more of those running back wheel routes? That's something that's really hard for linebackers to cover. And when you have the speed like Tyree and the catching ability, it's something that should be utilized more often. Maybe they're just like waiting to unveil this like Tyree, like
the Tyree offense is coming, right?
Yeah, it's like it almost makes like what or were they slowly like trying to release things? It just doesn't make sense of why we haven't seen that kind of attack yet.
Well, when you look at what Notre Dame's offense was last year, because I know we're all banging our heads against the wall thinking the Brian Kelly offense was gone, but we're still seeing a lot of the, Brian Kelly offense or whatever it is that we're going to call it. But, the running backs got the ball in their hands. I think Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree combined for like 75, 80 catches off the top of my head last year. That's not the pace that the top two running backs would be on right now. They're at a very, again, Chris Tyree as Kyron Williams backup last year was averaging 6.6 touches per game. As the guy with the most experience of the three running backs right now, he is only averaging 6 touches per game. And, I'm saying touches because he can obviously do more than just run the football. There are other ways to get him involved, as we saw in the Fiesta Bowl, but we haven't seen any of that so far. So, and I think that's what everyone is waiting to see right now. Is it going to change with Drew Pine as the quarterback? And do you think that, again, with this defensive front and, to all the things and asking Drew Pine to make quick decisions, we were talking about the other day about Drew Pine going tempo. Do you think that is the way to go against this specific defense, more tempo type stuff?
Yeah, because when the thing about tempo is once you get going and you exploit something, you can just keep exploiting it. That you can't sub out. And so if Notre Dame finds a mismatch that they like, they can continue to exploit it time and time again. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see more passing, but it's not going to be downfield passing. I think Pine is very good at getting the ball out quickly with accuracy and being sharp. And that's going to be, a lot of like quick laser passes of slants, hitches, screens. We're going to see a lot of that kind of passing, but I don't think that we're going to see a lot of downfield passing. And I think that's got to be the game plan, is just getting the ball out of Pine's hands quickly and just saying, okay, we like our athletes against yours, get them in space and just get them the ball and see what happens. And you can't, in my opinion, you can't get mad if you're getting the ball out and you're catching these screens and slants and the guys make the tackles. You tip your cap and say, that's a good football play, but make them make the play.
Take your yards. Yeah, make them make the play. Take the yards as well. We are not Marshall. Jesse, can we motion Lindsey to the backfield and have him go out on a screen?
Yeah, and that's another, quick play you can run is motion Lindsey across the line of scrimmage. As soon as he gets to about the tackle, you hike the ball and then you screen him out. Your outside wide receiver runs a slant in. He's got, he catches the screen and he's got, the whole sideline to run up out of. And that's another thing that I'm so surprised we haven't seen is utilizing motion, because motion not only sets up plays, but it allows the quarterback to recognize, is this man?
What defense are they in?
Yep. Yes. Is it man or is it zone? The more you can get the defense running around pre-snap, the more confusion that you get going. And so there's all different kinds of motions you can run. And when you have speedsters like Tyree and Lindsey, I think that's something you should be utilizing.
And Styles as well.
I think that getting, maybe even lining up with Tyree in the background and motioning him out as kind of a split out wide receiver is something that can be very beneficial, because then that way, maybe you have Tyree split out and then you have, your two outside wide receivers crash down and quickly run a screen, off of that. There's so many things that I think that they should be doing with Lindsey and Tyree pre-snap that should allow them to do kind of more things. And I'm really surprised we haven't seen that, because of what I was just talking about. Like, even if you're not even going to use the motion man, you can completely use him as a decoy,
Right.
and use him as recognition of this is what the defense is trying to accomplish pre-snap.
Yep. Michael says Buckner was missing easy reads too. Couldn't hit any of those deep passes. Needed to hit a couple of those. And
Yeah.
I agree. And I'm going to be really curious to see if Drew Pine, a guy who's been around for one more year than Tyler Buckner, and a guy who we've got to talk to Drew Pine twice. We talked to him this week. We talked to him early in training camp, basically the first week of training camp before the decision was made on who the quarterback is. And Drew Pine has talked a lot about how he hunkers down in the film room. And when he starts feeling nervous and, starts feeling some of the outside stuff, he likes to get into that film room and, get himself going with that stuff. So how much is that going to translate on the field on Saturday? Because that's what that's supposed to be for, the recognition, all this different stuff. So how much is that going to help him? Is it going to help him? That's big, because again, you could tell that Tyler Buckner, as a young, inexperienced quarterback, like it showed. There were some simple things he was missing. There was a lot of raw talent there, but a lot of those reads, a lot of these different things were missing for him. So is Drew Pine going to, is he going to be a step up in that direction because of that extra year of experience, and because of, as again, he's told us he watches a lot of film. That's got to show on Saturday.
I think the main thing is just we talked about this too. Drew Pine has a swagger about him. I think he'll just let it eat. I don't think he's worried more so about the repercussions rather than just letting that thing sling sometimes. And I think that that's kind of what this offense might need right now, is some aggressiveness, just to let it rip and let these guys make plays. Is just get the ball in their hands. And like Marshall said, speed and space wins games. And that's really, for a struggling team, get your speed in space, get them the ball. And if, like I said, if they tackle you, that's fine. Tip your cap. But, at least give them the opportunity to make those plays in space and use their speed. And I think that's really what the game plan should be about, is finding our guys in space on short plays. It doesn't have to be these huge downfield plays. How can we get our guys the ball quickly and get it to them in space?
That's why Chris Tyree's got to touch it more, because again, like the limited times that he has touched the ball, you can see a different kind of energy that he runs the ball with. You see a lot of quick twitch, and they've got to be able to put that to use. All right, great stuff tonight, Jesse, on the breakdown on both sides of the ball for Notre Dame, coming up with Cal Saturday. Right now, you know what it's time for. It's rapid fire time.
The best time of the show.
That's right. Let's start with this. Notre Dame minus 11.5, an 11.5 point favorite. That line actually moved in their favor a point over the last couple days. The over-under 40.5 for Notre Dame and Cal. What do you like Saturday?
So wait, you're telling me that Notre Dame is actually favored
by 11.5 right now
to beat 2-0 Cal as 0-2 Notre Dame, who just lost to Marshall. I think that is very surprising in my opinion. I think that line should be probably around 6.5, maybe, for Notre Dame. Okay. I don't think that Notre Dame has deserved to be an 11.5 point favorite in this game. Cal has been able to succeed offensively and put up points. Notre Dame has not been able to succeed offensively and put up points. That's not even a tease. That's a smash. I think this game definitely hits the over. That's only 20 points per team. Maybe that's, so what, 3 touchdowns each. I think Notre Dame might get 4, and then Cal gets 2. But I'm definitely thinking that this game is going to get racked up in points, because Cal, like I said, Cal likes to pass the ball. It's going to be a long game, whether or not they're getting, incompletions or first downs. The clock is going to be stopping a lot. There's going to be more possessions. So I do see this game definitely hitting the over, but I don't like Notre Dame as 11.5 point favorites. I think that number should be down a little bit.
Completely agree with that. I like the over on this as well. I believe that is my score prediction, which will come out tomorrow at Irish Breakdown when we publish all of our score predictions. The over, I do like Notre Dame winning this game, but again, I think points are going to be somewhat at a premium just based on the way things have gone so far. And I agree. 11.5 just seems crazy in this. I don't know. 11.5 is a lot. I agree. Like a touchdown or so seems a lot more reasonable based on how things have gone so far. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame has not forced a turnover through its first 2 games.
It is inexcusable that Notre Dame has not created a turnover the first 2 games. I could give a pass to them against Ohio State. That's a very good quarterback, a very good offense, a guy who knows what to do with the ball in that kind of situation. But to not get anything against Marshall was a little head scratching. I know Columbia, they like to run the ball and they like to get the ball out quick, so chances of turnovers are a little bit lower. But I mean, when you're Notre Dame and you're supposed to have this kind of presence on defense, especially your defensive line, you need to create pressure to force interceptions. You need to create pressure and get some sacks that potentially might lead to some fumbles. But it's completely inexcusable in my opinion. I think if Notre Dame wants to win this game, they need to create at least 1 turnover from Cal.
Interesting that Ohio State still hasn't created a turnover yet, as Archer 452 just let us know. I didn't pay that close attention to their game last week.
When they play Toledo this week, they don't really need to create a bunch of turnovers. That offense is just
That's true.
It's going to be an air raid again, just like it was last week.
That's true.
My boss, huge Ohio State fan, and we were talking today. I don't see Ohio State not scoring less than 21 points again this season. I think that they're definitely going to hit over 21 points the rest of this game. And when you have an offense like that, I know what you're saying. Like it's like, okay, why be so hard if even a team like Ohio State hasn't created a turnover, but Ohio State doesn't need to create turnovers at a level that Notre Dame does, because Ohio State's offense is one of the best in the country. And right now, Notre Dame's offense is kind of at the bottom of the country, if we're being honest.
If you cause a turnover in either of those games last week, you're probably looking at completely different outcomes in both games, especially if you come up with it at the right time, if it's an opportunistic type turnover. And it's just unfathomable to me. Now, I realize you've got a new defensive coordinator and all that, but you also have a new head coach with a defensive background, and this team was 15th in the nation last year in turnover margin. They were +9 in turnover margin last year. And to be sitting here 2 games into the season, especially when you're playing a group of 5 team and you can't cause 1 turnover to help affect a game, and you turn the ball over that many more times than Marshall, that you lose the turnover margin against Marshall. It is just bonkers to me, because watching these guys in training camp, we got to see a lot of the position drills at the beginning of practice, and both sides of the ball, the focus was, the focus for the offense was ball security. The focus for the defense in their position groups was going and, ball hawking, going and getting the ball. And so far we've not seen it. Now, Al Golden said this week, a lot of times these things come in bunches, and they just haven't been able to cause anything so far. So it's really head scratching that, especially in a game like last week, they lose the turnover margin. They were not able to cause anything. So let me turn that into this one on that same subject. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you agree with this? If Notre Dame has more sacks than Cal and wins the turnover battle Saturday, they will get their first win.
Oh, that's 10 out of 10. That's if they get more sacks, they create some turnovers, I don't doubt that they will win the game. I think that gives the offense a little bit of momentum. I think that the defense knows that they need to, anchor down and create those turnovers and create those kind of sacks and those situations to get Cal's offense off the field. It's a direct correlation. The more that this defense excels, the higher probability that Notre Dame has to win. And that's largely a product of, the offensive struggles and a backup quarterback going on right now. And it sounds like my dog
I think Henry agrees. I think
yeah.
Henry agrees with everything that you're saying. He's like, yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it, Pops.
He's getting fired up back here. He sees me, and he knows what needs to be done.
That's right. Exactly. And I completely agree. Like Isaiah Foskey forced 6 fumbles last year, and he was the sack leader last year. And we finally saw a sack last week. I think that's a big part of it. Again, like this is a team that gave up 4 sacks to Cal last week. If Isaiah Foskey can get free, I think he alone can accomplish both things. Again, we're talking about 2 close games. They were unable to force a turnover in either game. I think that definitely, if they get to Plummer more regularly and they win the win the turnover margin, they're going to win this game on Saturday. Absolutely agree with that. They've got to be able to help this offense out by getting a couple of takeaways during a game. It's just as simple as that. So, Jess, we're going to see a new quarterback, of course, Saturday. Drew Pine making his first career start. Cooper Rush is going to start for the Dallas Cowboys as well this weekend. So, whose quarterback situation are you more confident in right now? Notre Dame's or the Cowboys?
I would have to say I'm more confident in Notre Dame, actually. And that's because, the Notre Dame or the Cowboys last week problems went beyond the quarterback play. They had one wide receiver and a bunch of undrafted free agents out there. And when you don't have guys running to the right part of the field, you can't really do anything because then your scheme falls apart. The plays are largely designed on wide receivers running a very specific route and occupying very specific zones in the field. And you couple that with a backup quarterback and still bad wide receivers, I think that there's an issue. Flip side, Notre Dame, they have the players to make plays in space. They're just not getting them the ball in an efficient manner. But I think that they've kind of realized those things. And like I said, that I think that Pine's going to be ready to get that ball out. He's going to rip it. And I think that he's going to get the ball to his guys very quickly, and there's going to be little hesitation. I think that he's going to have 1 or 2 kind of primary reads, and outside of that, he's going to probably be told just to eat the ball at that point. He's going to get it's going to be a lot of quick pace, hike, quick drop, get the ball out quickly and let our guys get in space. And I think that, Notre Dame has that advantage is they have more players in the skill position who know what they're doing compared to the Dallas Cowboys, which is kind of crazy to say.
Yeah, I've seen the Cooper Rush story before, and I mean, you nailed all the details right there. And we saw the Cooper Rush story 2 years ago when Dak Prescott broke his ankle. It did not end well. The skill position, just again, as you detailed right there, the skill position situation for the Cowboys right now is much worse than it was 2 years ago. So I am much more confident in Notre Dame's situation, especially if, they've got the skill. They've got guys with speed. They have to get them on the field and they have to utilize it. That is the big thing. Are you going to put Drew Pine in a position to succeed by having some of these guys on the field and getting the ball in their hands in ways that we have not seen so far? That's the biggest question. Tom asking, as we were talking about Jack Plummer, does he have wheels, the Cal quarterback? He does not. He's not Jake Plummer, from back in the day, Jake the Snake. He is Jack Plummer, and he does not have the same kind of wheels that Jake Plummer has. And Plummer,
I like this one too. I'm glad
salty,
you brought this one up.
Plummer likes to throw interceptions. Let's accommodate him.
He loves the hash to hash throw, which is very surprising. Like in the game I don't know if it's the product of who they're playing, UNLV, but he made 2 throws all the way across the field, hash to hash, like 10 yards down. And I'm telling you, I said it yesterday, Tyreek Bracey going to create that first turnover. He's going to try that deep across the field throw. Tyreek Bracey is going to go up and get it. I'm telling you right now, all of you can pay me next week.
All right.
When Tyreek Bracey gets that interception,
I'm ready.
First turnover created by the defense.
Everyone's buying Jesse a beer next week if that happens, right?
I'll post my Venmo in the chat. Don't worry.
All right. Oblige him. I feel like that was an Inglourious Bastards reference. I don't know if it actually was or not from Salty. But up as fragged, says Sean's right regarding turnovers. Barring that game, should not be close. Offensive stat for Caldo versus Davis. First quarter, 4 possessions, 3 punts, interception, total yards -1. O is bad. Defense is middling. Notre Dame ++. Yeah. Get a turnover or 2, and you can drastically change the complexion of the game. Here's a question for you. Jess, on Notre Dame's offense. Will Notre Dame, which will Notre Dame have first this season? A 100-yard rusher or a 100-yard receiver?
I believe it's going to be a 100-yard receiver, and it's going to be against Cal. I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be Mayer. I honestly could see as long as they do what they're supposed to. I could see Tyree creeping up just because of his big play ability, being able to catch maybe a screen and go 20, 30 yards. And it's so hard to say who it's going to be because they're not putting the best personnel out there.
Yeah.
It could easily be Tobias Merriweather in a game like this because, again, you get him the ball and you just let him operate in space with its athleticism. You don't got to know a whole lot as a wide receiver to catch a screen. It's really not that difficult. So I think it's going to be a 100-yard receiver. I just don't know. It's going to be this game. I just don't know who it's going to be. It's got to be someone like Mayer or Tyree or Merriweather. I don't think it's, outside of those three, I don't know who else it could really be.
Yeah, I'm going to say receiver as well because, like what you were talking about, we've seen so much of Estime, and I like Estime, but the problem is he's just got to get it up in there and find a hole. There's still too much lateral movement. Now, not all that is his fault. Some of that is the play design and stuff like that, but I think it's the receiver as well. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame wearing green jerseys against Cal Saturday is blank.
Notre Dame wearing green uniforms is tradition against Cal. I love the green uniforms. I don't care if you're 0-2. I don't care how bad you are. I love the green uniforms, and any excuse to wear them, to me, it's an extension of the Notre Dame tradition. I don't know if there's any more iconic green jerseys than Notre Dame's. I love the way that they look this year. I think they did a great job with those, and I'm really excited to see them wear them. And, maybe it's that little spark that the team needs. There's always guys love that kind of stuff, whether it's a jersey, whether it's, a new pair of cleats that they're wearing for the game. Guys eat that stuff up. And with the team that's struggling right now, I think doing things like this, I know it's been planned. No one knew that they would be 0-2 going into this game. But I just think it provides just a little bit more of that factor of guys enjoying being out there. And I think it's fun. I love when they wear the green uniforms. I hope that they give out a green towel like they used 2 years ago for every fan. That way, everyone's participating with the green. I just think it should be a green invasion this Saturday, and it should be all hands on deck to get this first win.
I love the fact that they're wearing green. I was talking to some people earlier this week, and I heard that there were already people saying, oh, if we lose again, it's going to be because of the green. You're not going to lose because of the green jerseys. I'm sorry. And it was already planned. And I love the fact that they did it this way, that they weren't just springing the green, on everybody. I think that there should be one designated green game every year. I love the fact they're doing it. They tweeted out a picture of the green jerseys today. And as you said, names on the back, the names are in white. The numbers are navy blue with the gold trim, which I don't like. I don't like those dark numbers on this green, especially. If this green was a little bit lighter and there was more differentiation, I would just prefer white, solid white numbers on these. Yep. I think it would be a really because the white names, again, go to the Notre Dame football Twitter account. You can see the picture of them if you haven't seen them already. That that white lettering pops on that green. I would like to see white numbers to match. I think that it would really pop. It would really look sharp. But I love the green. I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, like you can kind of see on the IB flag back there. It would be ideal if they did the white lettering and the gold outline with the green uniforms. If they just changed those navy blue numbers to a white color, I think that they would be perfect. But I can't complain. I still think that they look sharp, and I'm excited for them to wear them this weekend.
Yeah, Brian said white or gold numbers. I agree. I would rather see that. Okay, after drafting Lions wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown in fantasy football, a guy direct messaged St. Brown on IG, and here's what he said. Congrats! You've been selected to my fantasy team. With that being said, I want to set some ground rules. We'll be perfect in every aspect of the game. You drop a pass, you run a mile. You miss a blocking assignment, you run a mile. You fumble the football, and I'll break my foot off in your John Brown hind parts, and then you will run a mile. perfection. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this? A guy drafting a player on his fantasy football team and sending him this kind of message.
It's like when you read something like this, you just hope that he's trolling, right? Like it can't be serious. And if it is serious, then there's so many more problems going on. Like who do you think that you as one person is going to influence the play of an NFL wide receiver? And two, don't you think that St. Brown knows these things? Don't you think he's trying to catch every pass? Don't you think he's trying to execute every block? Do you think
like you're going to motivate a professional football player to do better with a message like this?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, one, are you trolling? And two, what are you hoping to accomplish if you're not? Like either way, it's not a good look. I hate that these people get so consumed. Fantasy football is supposed to be fun, have a good time. It gives you, the opportunity to probably watch some players that you don't normally watch, and it gets you into some games outside of, the team that you root for. And unfortunately, it just like with everything else, guys, not guys and females find ways to just take it to the next level for no reason, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, it is. It is above and beyond. And St. Brown posted, he took a screenshot of it and posted it. I guess we shouldn't be surprised, but I'll just say, don't be sending direct messages to guys you draft in fantasy football. It's like you hear all these stories about people, like they get a chance to meet some of these players. Oh, I've got you on my fantasy football team. That's the last thing these players want to hear about, is you getting them on their fantasy football team. Because like you said, I think they're motivated enough without it. We are Marshall. I took the first pick in my fantasy draft, the Dallas Cowboys backup quarterback. Good luck with that. God bless you. I will say, Cooper Rush. Okay, last question tonight. Aaron Judge has 57 home runs this season. This is our token baseball question for the week. I guess it's our second, actually. We had a Pujols question earlier. If he gets to 62, he would rank first the New York Yankees record and the still standing American League home run record of 61 set by Roger Maris. So if Judge does that, would you consider him to be the true MLB single season home run record holder?
It's tough because you got, 6 different kind of, outside of Maris, you got 3 seasons by Sosa, 2 seasons by McGuire, and then obviously Barry Bonds has the single season record, but all of that is kind of shadowed, neglected, overlooked by the steroids. And so this one's hard for me because I say Barry Bonds should still be in the Hall of Fame. And if I make that stance, then I believe that it should hold true that Barry Bonds' single season home run record should stand as true as well. And so for those reasons, I don't think that I could necessarily recognize it as the single season record. And another thing I want to say is I am far more concerned. This Aaron Judge thing is cool, hitting a lot of home runs. I'm more consumed with Pujols getting to 700.
Are you?
I could care less about Judge's, home runs this season. I think that's a product of him being a Yankee and all those things.
Well, there have been a lot of other Yankees, though, who have never got to 62 or even, 60 for that matter.
Yeah. And so I
don't like the Yankees, but I agree. I agree with, but there have been a lot of other Yankees who haven't even got that many.
So, yeah, is it impressive? Yes. Could I ever do it? No. Is it very hard? Has any other Yankee ever done it? No. And I would be impressed. Yes. If he could set the single season Yankee record for, it's the hands down the best organization, in MLB. But what I'm saying is I am more consumed with Albert Pujols getting to 700. I think that's far more of a milestone than a single season record, to have the longevity over his career and to hit a milestone of 700.
Very true.
Think that's a big number. And a side question, I know we're kind of derailing here a little bit, but I want to ask you, if you're Albert Pujols, because he's got about a month left to get 3 home runs, if he gets 2 more and sits at 699, do you ask the Cardinals to bring you back until you get to 700?
This is what Vince and I talked about the other day. I think you've got to come back.
You have to.
Now, the question is he coming back with the Cardinals, Or like, is he coming back with, like the Pittsburgh Pirates
It's
or
only
the
going to be the
Marlins?
Cardinal. No one's going to
Yeah.
give him a contract if he's sitting at 699. He's done so much for the Cardinals. I think that there's no way that you sit at 699 and call it a career. You tell the Cardinals, hey, I'm playing. You don't even have to pay me. I just want career home run number 700. As soon as I hit it, I'll retire, and you'll
Right.
never have to hear from me again.
That's exactly right. Let me DH for a week and see if I can get it, or 2 weeks, or however long it takes. I agree with that. Pujols needs to come back if he's sitting on 699. They're both hitting at a clip that they should break this record. I guess back to so I completely agree with what you were talking about with Pujols. I think you got to come back if you're sitting on 699. I think he's going to get over 700 this year.
Oh, they're going to throw him lob balls,
Yeah,
They're going to just feed him some fastballs right down the middle.
I think Barry Bonds was a great player, but I think Aaron Judge, like, there needs to be at this point, if you were going to put an asterisk next to Roger Maris's 61 for as long as they did, which they did in the record books, there's got to be an asterisk next to Barry Bonds.
Oh yeah,
as well. But unfortunately, there's not. Now, we don't know with 100% certainty that Aaron Judge isn't taking anything, because there are other synthetic, and I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying there are enough new synthetics out there, and things that they haven't been able to detect yet. Aaron Judge is a guy who hasn't got close to this number before because of some health things. It's like all of a sudden he's staying healthy for a full season. So again, I'm not saying, but at the same time, to break, it's amazing because of all these other records, the Bonds and the McGuire and Sosa. Obviously, we know they're in the National League, but I think it kind of got swept up, back like in 97 with the home run chase and all that stuff, that like this is still the American League record, that Roger Maris, through all this, even though he doesn't have the big league record, 61 is still the American League record and the Yankee record. And Judge is just smashing home runs left and right. So, I'm not a Yankee fan by any stretch of the imagination either. I don't necessarily hate Aaron Judge, but I think it's a record, if he gets it, that, they need to really celebrate, considering basically all these other records should really just be thrown in the garbage can.
And last thing I'll kind of say on this is if he gets that 62, the Yankees just look that much worse because they could not get him locked up before this season. Yep. And now he's going to potentially break the AL record held by a Yankee. So he's going to be the leading Yankee home run leader. He could be the leading AL home run leader all time. That's this right here. That's money signs in Aaron Judge's eyes. And you got to give credit to Aaron Judge because he turned down the money in a contract year and he's hitting all these freaking home runs.
That's right. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight as we finish with a little baseball talk. And don't forget, we've got IB Countdown to Kickoff, 10 o'clock Saturday morning, live right here on the YouTube channel. You will find it on the podcast channels as well. Afterwards, don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe, rate, review, comment, all that good stuff. We do appreciate it. Jesse, have a good weekend. Enjoy the wedding that you're going to. And, find us afterwards. I'm sure you'll be able to find it.
Oh yeah, I'm leaving everyone on this. I'm gonna find everyone when Tariq Bracy gets that interception, and when you see Cal passing the ball 90% of the time, when they come out as shotgun 11 personnel, you know where to find me.
That's right. All right, we're looking for Tariq Bracy. We will talk to you Saturday next week as well on this show, IB Nation Sports Talk.